Just cause you managed to get your name on the UFC roster doesn't mean that they're happy to have you. And for these 5 fighters, feuding with Dana White was part and parcel of their UFC experience. Francis Ngannou. To kick things off, we have a modern entry, courtesy of the recently released UFC heavyweight champion, Francis Ngannou. This one is still quite relevant in the MMA news cycle, but ever since Ngannou's failure to beat Stipe Miocic at the first attempt, and the abysmally bad follow-up fight with Derrick Lewis that came after, Dana White's trust in Ngannou has been failing. First, he made Francis win 4 straight fights by first-round knockouts before giving him a second title shot. Then, when Ngannou started rallying his fellow fighters against the promotion, Dana responded by openly threatening Ngannou on several occasions. Francis basically wanted the freedom to pursue other options in the fight game. Due to his belief that he was underpaid, Dana, after hearing that Ngannou had spoken to the team of Jake Paul about securing a fight under their promotional banner, decided to issue a threat of lawsuit to Ngannou's team on the very day he was scheduled to defend his title against Ciryl Gane at UFC 270. This was clearly meant to rattle the Ngannou camp ahead of the big fight. But once Francis managed to get his hand raised in what was the last bout on his contract, it was clear that his days were numbered. Even as the baddest man on the planet, Dana White had no problem letting him walk. Ngannou was a real enemy for Dana and his team, right up until his last moment as champion. Randy Couture. Randy Couture had just about as successful a UFC career as you could ever imagine. Despite starting the sport in his 30s, Randy somehow won UFC gold 5 times across 2 different weight classes, becoming an icon in the process. In fact, he was already renowned as a larger-than-life hero by the time he defied all expectations and became the oldest champ the promotion had ever seen at 43. But even with the adoration of the fans behind him, Randy consistently butted heads with Dana White. Whether it was his refusal to sell off his image rights for a UFC video game, or leaving his contract because he felt the promotion weren't allowing him to compete against the best in Pride. Things took a real turn for the worse later in his career when Randy tried to get out of his active contract. An angry Dana White openly accused Couture of lying to him several times during their professional relationship. Randy, in retaliation, decided to sue Zuffa before eventually returning to the octagon to close out his career. These guys did eventually patch it up, but to say their track record is spotty would be an understatement. If you are enjoying this content and want to see more videos like this, drop a comment and subscribe to our channel to never miss out on any of our upcoming videos. Demetrious Johnson. In the long list of reasons why Dana White could be angry at a fighter, it is hard to pinpoint exactly how to justify his problem with Demetrious Johnson. On the surface, you're not going to meet a nicer dude than this longtime flyweight champion. So what was the issue? Well, Mighty Mouse was just too good at his job. After going 12 defenses deep as a champion, Dana White and a large portion of the fans got so bored with the flyweight division that it was almost axed. Sounds like a ridiculous reason, right? Well, it's not like DJ wasn't trying. Towards the end of his run especially, he was pulling off some insane finishes, including a first-round destruction of Henry Cejudo and his magical suplex to armbar over Ray Borg. But somehow, the general public and the UFC themselves got it into their heads that the 125-pound division was simply a bad weight class. And it came extremely close to getting cut entirely. In reality, Johnson was just a tremendous fighter, and his mastery of every realm of the MMA skill set was just making his contemporaries look bad. Something that was proven when he eventually left. Nowadays, the flyweight division can always be relied upon to deliver the action, and after years of not seeing eye to eye, Johnson now has a home in one championship. That seems to treat him with the respect he deserved. There's no denying it, Dana White's terrible attitude towards Demetrious Johnson was one of his biggest failures. Tito Ortiz. This next one is without a question one of the deepest but ultimately most petulant feuds in MMA history. One thing to understand about Dana White and Tito Ortiz is that they have some real history. Once a manager-fighter duo, tensions started to flare between these two when Dana began to move away from his role as manager and boxing coach to Tito in favor of a full-on leap into fight promotion. When Dana was involved in buying the UFC, that's when things started to get really ugly. Anger that White was paying Chuck Liddell more than him. Tito started taking shots at the UFC president whenever the opportunity presented itself. Even as a breakout star from the promotion, it was clear that the promoter himself wanted to see the 205-pound champ lose. Who can forget the time Tito even wore a t-shirt during fight week adorned with the words, "Dana White is my bitch"? These two even signed on to compete in a charity boxing event, a fight that Dana seemed far more confident about than Ortiz. In the end, Tito withdrew from the fight, but to this day, there is no love lost between these former friends. Frank Shamrock. Frank Shamrock is arguably an even greater mixed martial artist than his brother Ken, and a man who brought some much-needed stability to the 205-pound division with a run of 4 straight title defenses towards the turn of the century. But ever since his ugly split from the UFC, the promotion have done their utmost to try and wipe his name off the history books. You'll see no mention of Shamrock's name in the UFC Hall of Fame, and after 20+ years since his last walk to the UFC octagon, he has almost become a forgotten legend of the sport. So why did this happen, you ask? Well, it is not entirely clear when the wheels fell off his and Dana White's relationship, but all of a sudden, Shamrock was constantly throwing digs at Dana in the media. The UFC president tried to dismiss the whole feud, telling the world that Shamrock was crazy and just a weird guy. But we've heard Dana use these tactics before. What's crazy about this situation is that even someone like Tito Ortiz, who Dana clearly despises, he still gets credit whether it's due and a place in the UFC Hall of Fame. But Frank Shamrock, who beat and TKO'd Ortiz in the 1999 Fight of the Year for the 205-pound belt, nothing. Dana clearly tried to scrub this dude's name off on an important chapter in UFC history, and to this day, it doesn't look as though Shamrock will ever get the respect he deserves.